Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bashem, Rakah, Kodash, Tabanis to my apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to my brothers teaching this word. And as you can see, in this current setup, this current world, which is ruled by the biblical Edomites, everywhere is wickedness, everywhere you go, and the vibration of the people, is full course on wickedness, and what Yahweh Shai does to wickedness, man. Because wickedness right now is our all-time high, and the lack of the fear of the Lord is our all-time high. And when the Lord Yahweh Shai, bring forth his wrath, the whole world is going to be afraid, man. Just as the Lord did at the time of Noah, at the time of Exodus, when the Lord showcased his wrath, the people feared. Right now the people don't fear the Lord because Yahweh Shai hasn't, brought instantaneous judgment on them yet. The Lord hasn't opened up on them yet. So they think they're in a good case. They think that they're okay. They think that, that there's not going to be no repercussion for their actions. But the Lord is going to hold you people accountable. No one escaped Yahweh Shai. Just because the Lord hasn't, opened up on Esau and this wicked world yet, don't think that they're going to get away. And we're very close to the Lord opening up on these people. And these wicked people, they don't understand how close they are to their downfall, man, to their pain and misery. This is 2nd Ezra 8, verse 50. For many great miseries shall be done to them that in the latter time shall dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. So in these last days, Yahweh Shai is going to bring great pain and misery to the people of the earth, man. Especially the people in, Esau or Edomite countries, because Esau runs this world. Edomite countries, the first world, beginning with America. These, Edomite countries, beginning with America, their lifestyle, the way of life in these countries, in these regions, because wherever Edomites go, they're the border of wickedness. Wickedness is everywhere. It's so high, man. And the lack of the fear of the Lord, is not in this place, because people are following after Esau because he's in power, so Esau being the demon, the self-proclaimed white man, them as a nation, they're really a nation of atheists. They don't really believe in a higher power like that. If they do believe in a higher power, he has to look like them, so the Edomites are really natural born atheists. They don't fear Yahweh Shai. They don't fear, the Creator, which is Yahweh Shai. So as they're ruling this world, the Lord hasn't really, opened up on them yet. Even though He's gonna do it, and it's all only gonna come through, Yahweh Shai, because Yahweh Shai is gonna conquer these devils, But these devils, beginning with their elites, they think that they're just gonna keep winning, just because the Lord hasn't, opened up on them yet. But they're dead wrong, and as well, that mentality that these, elites, of Edom have, the people also have that mentality. The people that are serving, working in Esau society, they have that mentality. They have no fear of the Lord, these people. That's why they go and get a tattoo. That's why they go and eat, all kind of abomination, especially our own people. Even Jake has the lack of fear of the Lord, So this whole earth is full of people that don't fear the Lord, man, and a very few remnant of the children of Israel are the only ones that really fear the God of the Bible. And ultimately, that's how the Lord wants it to be, because, like Yahweh Shai, the scripture said about when the Son of Man, Yahweh Shai, comes, will he find faith on the earth, and really the ones that are going to have the faith is really the elect, but that shows you how minute, the faith, and the fear of the Lord is, because the fear of the Lord is only the beginning of wisdom, is the foundation. This whole world, this whole, society, it's not rooted in the fear of the Lord. So that's why everyone thinks that they can just do well. Look at these women, look at these sodomites, this whole world is full of pride, alphabets, feminism, rebellion everywhere. you know, idolatry. You got, you know, Transformers. You know, everything is just bizarre, you know, because they lack the fear of the Lord. The reason why, you know, you see all this, you know, horrible, you know, rebellion that you see, because as we're in Yahweh Shai, you know, when we watch these people in the world, you know, we're sick and tired of them, you know. We want the Lord to bring the end, but we understand prophecy. We understand that, you know, the Lord, you know, had things happen in a timing, okay? So we got patiently wait, you know, but guess what? You know, as we're patiently waiting, you know, we're suffering, you know, being around these people, you know, watching these people, you know, live in Yahweh Shai's green earth and be complete reprobates, you know. And that's why we want the Lord to, you know, bring that judgment, and He is going to bring that judgment. And we understand that Yahweh Shai, you know, is very patient, you know, because the Lord has, you know, a long time, you know, hid His wrath, man. Because the scriptures mention it, "O power, thou hidest thyself," you know, talking about our power, Yahweh Shai, because the Lord, you know, has really, you know, hidden Himself, you know, He's hidden His power, okay. And as the Lord has hidden His power, you know, Esau and these other nations, you know, they think that, you know, that the Lord is with them, especially Esau. They really think that the Creator is with them because the Lord hasn't intervened as what they did to Jake and what they still do to Jake. You know, they think that Yahweh Shemashah is with them. You know, they think that they're all right with the Lord. You know, but they're sadly mistaken. Okay, and just as the elites think like that, you know, how much more the common people who are under the elites, you know, these peons, you know, okay, they really, you got a lot of people walking around that really don't believe in the Most High, you know, that really don't, you know, that really think that people came from, a monkey, you know, that stupid ass evolution, you know, people have more fear, you know, in Esau, okay, and in fictional things that Esau basically made up than the Creator Himself, Yahweh Shemashai. So the Lord's gonna do a lot of damage, man. Okay, the Lord's gonna answer these people and their lack of fear of Him, you know, through the miseries that He's gonna bring. You know, the famine, the war, cannibalism, you know, nukes, you know, the lasers. You know, the Lord's gonna show the world why He's to be feared. You know, why He is the King of terrors, man. You know, people used to call the Most High Yahweh Allah Shaja. You know, the Lord is gonna show the world why He's the King of terrors, man. The fear of the Lord is coming back, man, on a huge scale. You know, and that's gonna make the people wise, man, because it is a wise thing to fear Yahweh Shemashai. You know, now the people don't fear Yahweh Shemashai, but when the Lord brings all these great miseries, you know, they're gonna be afraid, man. Okay, the Lord is literally gonna shake terribly the earth. Okay, game time is over for these people, man. You know, the Lord, yeah, Yahweh Shemashai, you know, has held His wrath for a long time. Okay, but the Lord's getting ready to open up, man. You know, the Lord's about to pour down His severe wrath, man. He's gonna show these people why He's to be feared. When the Lord, when all is said and done, when Yahweh Shemashai brings upon, you know, His just acts, because every act of the Lord is righteous. You know, whether you people want to believe it or not, everything that Yahweh Shemashai does, you know, is righteous. You know, because the Lord, you know, doesn't do things wickedly. You know, Yahweh Shemashai is a righteous power, and He's the only power. So everything that Yahweh Shemashai does is righteous and is really just. Okay, so when the Lord comes down with great wrath, you know, it's going to be justified, of course. And not that the Lord needs to be justified. He's the Most High. He can do what He wants. But Yahweh Shemashai is a righteous power, and He's going to, you know, showcase his righteous indignation. Okay, that's why World War III is brewing. That's why, you know, you're seeing what's happening in America, the government shutdown and the snap, you know, and all these benefits about to be taken away. The Lord's going to come down on you people, man, particularly our people, you know, because our people are the only ones that can, that are really the only ones that Yahweh Shemashah loves. And really the Lord cares for the elect right now, you know, but our people have heard this truth, man. The Lord has given our people a lot of grace, you know, and our people don't fear the Lord, man. The vast majority of our people do not fear Yahweh Shemashai, you know, and the heathens were not really meant to, to come and repent and fear the Lord like that. They're gonna fear the Lord through, you know, when they're in slavery and when they're underneath us, when Yahweh Shai comes ultimately, you know, and through the judgment. But our people, man, you know, Jacob has heard this truth, you know. the Lord has sent out the prophets, okay, to give you the warning, okay, to repent before Yahweh Shemashai, unleashes his wrath, okay, because you want to get right with the Lord now, man. You don't not want to, be here. You don't want to be here when Yahweh Shemashai unleashes his wrath. Even Ezra said it, man. Woe is me, woe is me. Who can deliver me in those days? A man of Yahweh Shemashai said that, and Ezra is a man of the Lord, man, and he's going, get saved in these last days, and the brother's doing the work. We just don't know who he is, and we're not meant to know who anyone is anyway, because at the end of the day, work out our own salvation with fear and trembling, and all is going to be revealed when Yahweh Shai returns. Everyone's going to know who they were, when Yahweh Shai returns ultimately. Lord willing, we're part of the Lord's elect. But the main point I want to bring out of that is because Ezra's going to be here, because reincarnation is in the scriptures. The men of the Lord are back on the scene, okay? But when Ezra was, at the time, the book of 2nd Ezra was written, when he saw these visions, what's going to happen in these last days, like we just read, the great miseries that the Lord's going to bring, and the destruction of the nuclear war, Ezra was like, woe is me, and that's a man that feared Yahweh Shemashai, and that's a man of the Lord. If he has that mindset, how much more you people that don't even fear the Lord, that don't even believe that he even exists, okay? You people are going to find out, man, okay? And you're going to find out very, very soon, because the Lord is getting ready to showcase his wrath, man. He's going to show the people why, you should have always feared Yahweh Shemashai, and especially for you Edomites, why you should never have touched the Lord's people, and the other nations too, because the other nations have a hand, in the enslavement and had the children of Israel in captivity. All these nations are going to pay at the end of the day, but the Edomites have done the worst, and they're going to realize why they shouldn't have touched the Lord's people, and for our people, they're going to realize why, you should have repented and got right with Yahweh Shemashai and feared it. The fear of the Lord is coming back in a huge way, man, okay? Because the Lord is going to bring terrors on this earth, and those terrors are really his wrath. That's why we're trying to, please the Lord, because we understand the fear of the Lord, thanks to Yahweh Shemashai, not because, we're so great, to hell with us, man, we're all deserving to get our asses whooped, okay? We just hope the Lord have mercy on us, and the Lord, is showing mercy to us by, giving us this grace in Yahweh Shai, revealing this truth to us, okay? Letting us have this blessed hope in Yahweh Shai. That's mercy, The elect are going to, because the Lord has stretched forth his hands, the elect are going to, grab onto those hands, okay? That lifeline, and Yahweh Shemashai, has his prophets out here preaching this word for a reason, for you to repent. But very soon the Lord's going to say enough is enough, that's it, like he did at the time of Noah, and ultimately unleashed his wrath, because at the time of Noah, those people didn't fear the Lord. Jake back then, were known as the sons of the Most High. They didn't fear Yahweh Shemashai. The only ones that feared the Lord, was Noah, and the Lord had mercy in his household, man, who more likely feared the Lord too, because they were under, Noah's household. But we understand that, not everyone of the same household, is going to fear the Lord, like you can read in the account of Lot's wife, but, Noah and his family were the only ones that, that made it, man. And ultimately Noah feared Yahweh Shemashai. He was moved by the fear of the Lord, just as we're moved by the fear of the Lord, Lord willing that we enjoy, like Noah did, because he was the elect of that time, okay? Because we know the terror of the Lord, that's why we persuade men. We know that Yahweh Shemashai is a terrible power, and he's going to show why he's terrible, okay? But the Lord, doesn't just, destroy people out of the blue, even though he has every right to do that. The Lord is so merciful that he gave you a warning. He gave you like a tap on the shoulder. I'm about to bring my wrath. Get right. Okay, that's what the Lord basically said to the nation of Israel. But the vast majority of our people, ignore that tap on the shoulder by the Lord. Ignore that mercy from the Lord. Okay, instead of fearing the Lord and getting right with the Lord, the vast majority of our people use their grace period to be bigger demons, man. The lack of the fear of the Lord that they have. So when the Lord brings all this, the time of Jacob's trouble, they're definitely going to fear the Lord, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be good for them in that day, because the Lord ain't going to have mercy on them. He's only going to have mercy on the elect, okay? Everyone's going to be a fearer of the Lord very soon, What matters if you fear the Lord right now, and because if you fear the Lord right now, you know. Okay, he might have mercy on you, as an Israelite, of course. Okay, and the only ones that can truly fear the Lord on this side, you know, are really is really the nation of Israel. But the other nations are gonna fear the Lord when Yahweh Shemashai sends Yahweh Shai ultimately, and when they're in hardcore slavery, because hardcore slavery, they're also gonna get punished too, as well as we're gonna be teaching them, you know. But the fear of the Lord is gonna be back on the earth. It's gonna be rooted on the earth again. Okay, let me get a scripture. This is 2nd Ezra 16 verse 22. For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine. So these people, that are full of pride, that are living on the Lord's earth, that are disrespecting Yahweh Shemashai every day because their whole lifestyle, disrespects the Lord, what's going to happen to them? That are not rooted in the fear of the Lord. I don't even care about Yahweh Shemashai, particularly our people, the vast majority of our people, because the only ones that fear the Lord among our people at the end of the day is really the elect. Okay, so the vast majority of our people who don't fear the Lord, they're going to be perishing in famine. The Lord's going to have them die, of famine, and that's going to be horrible, man. Okay, when your stomach is touching your back, when you're almost looking like a skeleton, that's a long and painful death, man. You're better off getting put to death by a sword than dying of famine. Okay, but the Lord's going to bring that, and you can see, the early stages of it happening, man, with those benefits being cut, and Esau's going to weaponize that famine, and all in order for you to take the MOTB, which is the microchip, which the vast majority of our people are also going to take to their destruction. And only the elect are the only ones that are going to fear the Lord and not take that, even, choosing death than taking that. And that shows you the fear of the Lord, because at the end of the day, the Lord can raise you back up, okay, and understanding that Yahweh Shemashai is the only power, okay, and he's supreme above all, so really you should be fearing him and his son, because he's bestowed upon his son all power, and Yahweh Shai is the only way out of it, and the other that escape the hunger, so the people that don't get put to death by the famine, is because the Lord wants them to be put to death another means, shall be destroyed by the sword, the gun, the military, it's going to be blowing a lot of jakes up, with those hollow point rounds, the scriptures mention the sword is sharpened, so the Lord's going to have Esau's military out here gunning people down. Esau has the robots, AI, swords come in, many fashions, man, particularly that gun, and the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall be no more man to comfort them. There's going to be dead bodies everywhere. There ain't going to be no one burying them, putting them in funerals on the morgue. It's going to be very unhygienic, man. For the earth shall be wasted, and the cities shall be cast down. All these cities, because all these cities represent pride. Because all these cities, if you go to the major parts of the city, like the town center, you see all kind of abomination, man. Women walking around, almost naked, men out here doing what were crazy things, along with women, just people, living up in sin and in pride and arrogance, and the lack of the fear of the Lord, eating all kind of abomination, doing all kind of filthiness, and the Lord sees all of that. And Yahweh Shemashai is going to have all these people and these cities, get broken down, man, get, put in, in the dirt, literally. These people are literally going to be dung on the street, so it's going to be famine, violence everywhere, especially in the time of Jacob's trouble, man. And that's the miseries that the Lord is going to bring, to these people, man, because they don't fear the Lord. Because if they fear the Lord, you wouldn't have this huge, scale of judgment, man. And really, Esau is leading the whole world into one huge judgment, because Esau is the ultimate one, because Esau's in power right now, and the people, they follow the vibrations of the ruler, so Esau's leading the whole earth into one big judgment, man. Just as the time of Noah, it was, the whole earth was in wickedness. Right now the whole earth is in wickedness under Esau. So Esau's really leading the world into that second death, that major destruction, which is gonna be very terrible, man. Because this time is gonna be by fire. The first death was by water. This time Yahweh Shemashai is gonna use fire, the ICBM nuclear missiles, and the laser beams, man. It's gonna be one hell of a destruction. Okay, and all of that, massive death and massive destruction, men's hearts failing them for fear on the things that are coming on this earth. All of that is, to bring a judgment, is to equalize these people's pride and their lack of fear of the Lord. Okay, the reason why the Lord is bringing all, horrible judgments, on a huge scale, is because these people are being wicked on a huge scale, So if wickedness is this high, how much more the judgment? So the judgment is going to be very terrible. Okay, and the Lord has to show why he's to be feared. He has to show, these people got, because they fucked around, and now they're gonna find out. They played around with Yahweh Shemashai, and now they're gonna find out that Yahweh Shemashai is not the one to play with, and that Yahweh Shemashai is the king of terrors, man, and that you should have feared him from the beginning, and that's what the world is gonna find out, man. Starting with the biblical Edomites, and even the rebellious of our people, they're gonna find out too. The only ones that truly fear the Lord and moving in righteousness to the best they can is the elect. And that's who's going to be spared in that day, in the day of the Lord's wrath, man. Because the Lord's about to bring it, man. Very soon, the sword, martial law, race riots, troops, Very soon, man, all hell breaking loose, and the MOTB, the hour of temptation, is almost upon us, which is the microchip, the MOTB, and the hour of temptation is the time of great testing, and we're going to see who's about the Lord and who really fears the Lord, because the fear of the Lord is going to make you not take that chip, and some of the elect are going to lose their life for the Lord, but guess what? The Lord's going to bring them back, because, death is not the end of you, and death can't even separate you from the love of Yahweh Shai if you're part of the Lord's elect, because the elect are going to be, changed, and the ones that died are going to be the first, to be changed, man, and they're going to see the same people that beheaded them, get effed up, in this second death, in the major destruction that the Lord is going to do, and all of this is all by design, by Yahweh Shemashai, and the Lord's leading this world into one big judgment, because Esau ultimately, Yahweh Shemashai set Esau up in power, and the Lord allowed Esau to get this wicked, so that this, that this judgment that the Lord's going to bring, could be justified, and it's all going to lead to the fear of the Lord, and it's all going to lead to a righteous world, because Yahweh Shai is going to come and set up his kingdom, when the Most High, ultimately destroys this society and sends Yahweh Shai back, because when Yahweh Shai comes, that's going to be the ultimate end of Esau's world, the end of Esau's society, and the end of this current, human rulership of the earth, because Yahweh Shai is going to be ruling next, and under him is going to be the 144,000 with King David on top, and it's going to be a righteous world, and it's going to be rooted in the fear of the Lord, unlike this current world. Esau's world is not rooted in the fear of the Lord. That's why it's heading to great judgment, man. So Yahweh Shemashai is going to bring great judgment to match, the lack of the fear of the Lord at the end of the day. As wickedness is this high, how much more the judgment, So it ain't going to be, better days. It ain't going to be no light at the end of the tunnel if you're not of the elect at the end of the day. Things are going to get worse and worse, and ultimately the Lord's just going to unleash his full wrath, his severe wrath. And if you're not, in Yahweh Shai, if you're not rooted in Yahweh Shai, if you're not, seeking the Lord while he may be found, you're going to get caught up in these last days because you lack the fear of the Lord. Because if you feared Yahweh Shemashai, you be trying to seek the Lord 10 times, man. You be trying to please the Lord, man, because grace is almost running out, and Yahweh Shemashai is about to show the world why he is to be feared, So yeah, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Makakodash, double honors to my apostles and elders, great millstone. Shalom to my brothers and few sisters, listen and learn. Shalom.